However, she asks her to put the knife down in front of her, instead of taking it from her by force, and she can actually snatch the knife from her hand and take it. Then they meet someone coming running toward them, and tells them that they aren't alone on the island. There are many people sleeping on the sand, and when they wake up, they don't remember anything about their past, and they lost their memory. Then all the people on the island gather. A group tries to understand the reason for their presence on this island, and they guess that they are one team, because they all wear the same, and they wonder why they are all lost their memory. One of them then guesses that they were in the plane and it fell, but it is a weak possibility, because none of them is injured, and there are no bags or anything related to the plane accident. Meanwhile, one of them says that there is a stitched name on the back of the girl's shirt next to her, and it has the name Blair written on it. Then each one sees his name on the back of the shirt he is wearing. The girl who woke up and has a seashell was named Chase, and the girl who had the knife was named Casey. Also, there is a girl named Taylor, and a man called Cooper. In addition to Brody and other people, they know their names, and they keep moving on the island. Chase decides to go deep into the island until she finds anything, and Brody goes with her. The other people are relaxing on the beach and don't think of anything. They don't care about what they are in, and they decide to go down to the sea for a while. Meanwhile, Brody and Chase walk into the island. They find a waterfall in front of them and drink from it. Brody tells her that they should keep it a secret between them, because they are the ones who found it, and they don't have to share it with others. He tries to get close to Chase, but she refuses, and he assaults her forcibly, so she runs away from him. Meanwhile, other people remain on the beach, and there are many of them who went to the sea. They are enjoying their time until they find that there are sharks around them. They all try to get out of the sea quickly, and they peacefully get out except for one of them. His name is Don. The sharks attack and kill him. After all, they come out and sit on the beach, and they are shocked at what happened. Brody comes to them and they say that Don died in the sea because of sharks. He then asks Casey about Chase, because they separated to search for food or drink on the island. And after a while, Chase comes with coconut from the island. She hits Brody on the head with it. Then she fights him, saying that if he tries to touch her again, or touch anyone else, she will kill him. Brody tries to hide what happened, and says that she tried to get close to him first. And they say it is unbelievable that after she was assaulted, she goes to get food, and didn't return to them quickly to tell them what happened. In the evening, they all sleep for a while on the island. Chase dreams that she has a gun and kills someone, but he was begging her to leave him and not kill him. She gets scared from sleep and walks on the island. Chase finds that Don is alive and he bleeds, so she calls all her colleagues. They move him immediately to the place where they are sitting, and they get him closer to the fire to make his body warmer. Meanwhile, Brody goes to Chase and apologizes to her for what he did. He tells her that the group will hold a meeting, and he asks her to agree with the ideas he will say there, but she refuses to hear him. They all gather, and Brody suggests that they move to the waterfall to stay out of the sun for a while, and because there is no hope for them to enter the sea again. But Cooper refuses, and that because if they move to the waterfall, they will disappear from the sight of any plane, and no one will see them. Then a man called Mason says that he measured the distance between them on the island, and the distance between them was fixed. It is 39 kilometers exactly. This means that there was someone who put them all on the island at an equal distance. And when he completed his walk on the island, he found a sign that says that they should look for their place of return, and shows them this sign. But no one cares, because anyone might write this sign, and that person may have put the sign and then died, or something happened. But Chase is considered the only one who feels that the sign has meaning, and gets intolerant because no one believes it. She throws the seashell in her hand so it breaks, and finds that it is written inside that it belongs to land number 1. Moreover, she found a small device. Then, Chase stays beside the sign, and sleeps next to the seashell for the second day. When she opens her eyes, she finds that there is a rubber boat in front of her in the sea, and she decides to go down and get it. But before she was lying in the sea, her leg was injured and bleeding. And as soon as Chase goes into the sea, she finds that sharks are coming at her because of the smell of blood. She swims quickly to the boat, then enters the boat, but finds that there are bags containing first aid, bullets, and a locked bag. She pulls the boat toward the shore and decided to hide it in the trees. Then she goes to the rest of the group. Chase finds that Casey and Brody are going together to get food from the waterfall, and she warns her about Brody. She goes back to the boat and takes her bags to hide them in another place under a big rock. Chase notices that Casey's behavior is strange, and she finds her face turned. But Casey remains silent and doesn't want to talk to anyone, and it becomes clear that something happened while she was with Brody. They see that a storm is near them, and Brody tells them they must hide on the island in any way. But Cooper wonders why Brody always wants them to move and hear his words. They fight together, and Brody steals the knife from Chase. Then he threatens all of them. Cooper tells him that he doesn't need to fight with him more than that, and everyone saw Brody with the knife while he threatens them with it. Brody tries to improve his image and says that he lost any more his nerve. He then throws the knife out of his hand and walks away from them. But Casey takes the knife from the ground and returns it again to Chase, even though the knife belongs to her. Meanwhile, the storm gets closer to them, and the rain gets more intense. Chase takes them to the boat to hide inside, and they all hide in the boat until the next day. At this time, the storm passes and they sleep. The next day, Chase wakes up in the boat and walks on the beach. She returns to the place of her broken seashell and finds the device inside her. Based on that, she guesses that it might be the key that opens the locked bag, and she actually opens it. She finds that there is a gun, but puts it back in the bag and hides it. Chase then returns to her colleagues again. Meanwhile, a woman named Hayden sits with Casey and tells Casey that she is sure that something happened to her, because her face has turned since the time she returned with Brody. And after forcing her, she confesses to her that Brody attacked and assaulted her like before when he tried to assault Chase. But she couldn't escape from him like Chase, and it is her fault because she gave him the opportunity to assault her. By then, Chase thinks to go back into the woods to find anything. She moves with Cooper, and they enter the island. They find a large building like an abandoned hotel, so they return again to the group to tell them what they found. After they return to the group, Chase tells them that she entered with Cooper in the woods, and he didn't try to assault her like Brody. Brody gets very angry, and the two of them fought. Everyone is against her, and they ask her to go to the deserted place that she found, because they don't want her among them. Chase then goes to sleep in the boat. She wakes up the next day, and finds everyone next to her. They are holding her tight, and see Brody dead on the beach. All of them are sure that she is the reason, and asking her why she killed Brody with the knife she had. Chase tries to escape from them, but Casey hits her on the head with a stick, and she loses consciousness. Chase wakes up and finds herself in a completely different place. The place is developed in a prison reformatory, and she tries to talk to the nurse who is beside her. She is waiting for anyone to explain if she is imprisoned and on what charge. The guards take her to the office. She then sees a man called Warden Wells, and it seems he is the prison officer. He asks Chase about her health because she was in an experiment, and she is the only person who survived. She tells him that she wants to know the reason for her presence here, but he explains that this question, the specialists will answer it tomorrow in the session, and she will meet them in order to evaluate her condition. Chase asks about the island she went to, and why she doesn't know how she went there. He tells her that she wasn't there with her body, but rather in a simulation, so that they make her feel they are really on an island, and she was only in a simulator device. Furthermore, she and 9 other prisoners were in the simulation, which gives them a second chance to know what to do if they get out of prison. And after meeting the specialists, she will return again to the simulation and the island. The specialists then return her to the clinic again, and she is supposed to take a hypnotic to sleep for the next day, but she refuses and hits the guards behind her, and takes the nurse as a hostage so that she can escape from the place. But the prison is well secured, and they arrest her. She is put in solitary confinement, and she keeps thinking of an old woman sitting on a red chair who wants to kill her. Thereafter, Chase wakes up the next day and is summoned to the experts. They explain to her that it was a simulation of her mind, but her body was in an artificial coma. They ask her about her feelings during the simulation, and she tells them that she doesn't understand the question, asking them if was she supposed to do something specific on the island. The specialists explain to her the simulation helps them to know when the prisoners will get out of prison. And what will they do? Will they return to their crimes as Brody did? The nature of simulation degrades the nature of the growing up and upbringing of criminals. Furthermore, they think that changing a person's circumstances affect his nature. As a result, they all lost their memory, as if they started from the beginning. But Chase was able to get out of the simulation. This is the first time that this happened, and they don't know the reason for it. After the session ends, Chase is waiting for their decision. And will she go back to the simulation, or will she go to prison? She sits with Wells, then he tells her that he isn't convinced of the whole idea of simulation, and is trying to cancel it. He then says criminals deserve imprisonment only, and that whoever dies in the simulation will die in reality, because the simulation controls the brain itself. Therefore Brody died, and he deserves it because of his actions. But the problem is that someone on the island is the one who killed Brody. After that, Chase returns to the session again. They tell her that she is going back to the simulation, and that the decision is not up to her. She must carry out the decision by force. Meanwhile, Chase fights with them and beats them, but the guards stop her, and she goes back to the simulation. After she takes the hypnotic by force, she goes back to the place of the simulation by car, escapes from the car after she hits the gatekeeper, and she finds a building named Land Number 1 written on it. She enters and beats the camera guard. Then she steals a doctor's coat so she can move into the building. After that, she reaches the place where the simulation is at, and sees her colleagues in front of her. Wells is behind her, and tells her that she knows this place, and she was there before. The guards then attack her, and give her a drug to enter the simulation. Once again, Chase returns to the island, and wakes up from the coma she was in. Then Chase hears that they are saying she has been unconscious for 10 minutes, but she tells them that she has been unconscious for more than that, and tries to explain to them everything that she saw and happened. She says they are in a prison, but their minds are inside a simulation. The island isn't real, and that they are already criminals. They think she becomes crazy because of the hit, and no one believes her. Hayden listens to Chase, and remembers memories of her. She killed someone in his car, and crossed out his name from her notebook. Then she wakes up. Meanwhile, Casey then says that Chase is the only one who finds strange things in unknown places, and hides them from the group, so they must search her well. But Chase tries to run away from them, and everyone is running to catch her, and see what she's hiding. Meanwhile, a man and a woman appear on the island with a big knife, and they ask the group about what is happening. Cooper tells them that it is a misunderstanding, nothing more. He introduces himself to them, and knows that their names are Bonnie and Clyde. They say that they were on the other side of the island, and when they saw the fire, they decided to move toward the place of fire. They all gather again and trust in Bonnie and Clyde, but Chase asks them how they never talked about the body of Brody's that was thrown on the island. And it's weird that the two of them hadn't seen bodies on the island before, and the two is supposed to have lost their memory. Clyde tells Bonnie that they really forgot to talk about the body, and their plan failed. Meanwhile, they fight with them all. They say that all they want are the boxes that were in the boat, which Chase hid in a place that no one knows. Clyde catches Hayden, and tells them that Chase is innocent of actually killing Brody, and Hayden is the one who killed him. He stabs her with a knife, because after all that, she returned again to her criminal nature, and killed someone for the second time. In fact, Clyde is coming to apply justice on the island. But Hayden, as soon as she knew what happened to Casey, decided to apply justice by killing, as she did before in her life. And this was the reason for her imprisonment. Clyde says that their goal is to fail this whole experiment, and tells them that although the island is monitored by specialists, it contains many secrets and many gaps, because the system is new. Before they enter the island, they remove all their memories. But after a while, they will remember what they did and were imprisoned for it. And it is better that they start exploring the island, because there is actually a village on the other side of the island. Meanwhile, Clyde goes to unwrap Chase. Then he tells her that it's better for her to run away to a new place, because no one will believe her anymore, especially after all the things she's done. Afterward, Chase runs away, and goes to get the bag that contains medical aid, and she returns to give it to them, but she kept the gun, and run away again. Clyde tells the rest that he will keep watching them, and if someone made a mistake or got back to being a criminal again, he will kill him. Then Clyde and Bonnie leave. The rest decides to divide themselves into two groups. A group goes to see if really there is a village, and the second group stays in their place. Each one of those on the island begins to remember the crimes he committed before. Like Mason, who killed a large number of citizens in a shopping mall with his gun, without having any feelings. And Casey, who clearly was ready to commit suicide, along with her children, who were with her in the car. And this is what really happened, but the children were the ones who drowned. And Blair, who was a nurse, saw old patients wish to die in front of her, instead of the pain they felt. But in the hospital, the patient who asks for euthanasia, the management wastes his papers, and they were keeping exploiting the patient and his family to take all their money from them. Most likely, she is the one who killed them to have mercy on them of pain, and this is the reason that she knows a lot of medical information. Even Chase, who arrives at the abandoned hotel, imagines her mother sitting in front of her on the red chair, and she asks Chase why she killed her. Her mother then gets up from the chair and holds her neck. Chase keeps saying that what she sees isn't real, until her mother disappears in front of her. She finds a key to room number 39 in front of her, and goes to this room. Meanwhile, Taylor is on the beach, decides to run away from the island by a boat. Blair tries to stop her from what she is thinking, because Clyde has forbidden them from leaving the island for any reason. But Taylor doesn't listen to her, and she gets into the boat. Then she goes away from the island. But as soon as she was close to another island, the boat tipped over and she get hurt due by the island's rocks. When she arrives on the island, she finds there is a skull written on it, that it is owned by land number 2. Taylor remembers when she stole the bank with her lover, and when they killed the bank's guard. Then she tries to discover the island. Meanwhile, Casey remembers what happened to her, and that she wasn't happy with her life, because of her husband who was broke, and always hit her in front of her 2 children. She liked a customer who came to the bar where she worked, and they got close to each other. But when her husband knew about that, he tried to drown her. Then he told her that he would divorce her, and will never make her see the children again. At that time, she decided to make the children sleep, and took them to her car, then went down into the water, to commit suicide with her children. After she wakes up, she keeps crying, and sees the imaginations of her children and a car in front of her. Meanwhile, Blair is still with Dawn on the island, and because she helps and treats him, he loves her, and wants to marry her. At the same time, Dawn remembers when he loved his colleague at work who was married. She always rejected him, and tried to keep away from him. Even she threw his roses in the rubbish, and informed the company's management. But he met her, after everyone leaves the company, and told her that she hurt his feelings when she rejected him. That is why she has to die. He then strangled her to death, and wakes up from his memory, but Blair leaves without giving him an answer. During this time, Casey's still crying, and remembers what happened to her kids. Then her colleague Moses comes to reassure her that she already paid for what she did, and that they have to think about what's happening now, and try to get out of the island. She suggests that they have to look for Chase, because she is the one who will help them. Meanwhile, Chase is in the hotel, but she feels like someone is coming for her, so she attacks him. She finds out that he is Cooper, and tells her that he is looking for her. Then she tells him that she found pictures of her, that made her remember her life, and also found a picture they took together, and it seems they knew each other before, but they don't remember the details. Meanwhile, Taylor is sleeping on the second island, and she finds a plate of soup and starts drinking it. Clyde and Bonnie appear before her, and he tells her that she is on the island of Cannibal, and she has 2 choices: either stay on the island, or get back with them. He then says that more importantly, there is nothing on the island to make the soup. Taylor is shocked, and she takes off the gauze on her hand to find that her fingers were cut off, and she keeps screaming. The night comes, and Casey is sleeping in the village that she found with Moses. She wakes up in the night hearing her children's voices, and that they set fire to the houses. When Moses feels the fire, he wakes up to see what happening, but he is shocked when saw her holding a flame, and setting fire to the houses while talking with her kids. He then tries to wake her up, and they run away from the fire. Meanwhile, Chase remembers how her mother was cruel to her, and they were always fighting. But when Chase grew up, she decided to go to the military, which made her mother more angry, and she left her mother for years. In the military, she met Cooper and got to know him as he was with her in the division, but he suffered from a bombing, distorting his face. After that they got into a relationship, and live together on their farm. And now they are trying to remember more about the past. Meanwhile, Blair and Mason on the beach, and she treats the wound in his leg. But Don sees them from a distance. He gets annoyed and jealous on Blair, because he is obsessed with her. Don is waiting for Mason to leave, then tells Blair that he loves her, and he will not let Mason spoiling their love. He then says he wants to marry her on the island, and live the rest of their life on it. But she gets upset from his words, and leaves him again. She goes to Mason, who is remembering the crime he committed, and that he wanted to suicide after killing the people with his gun, but he failed and got arrested. Then Blair comes, and tells him that Dawn is obsessed with her. She afraid from Dawn, and is terrified to be with him in the same place. Blair asks Mason if he finds them standing alone, he must come and stand right next to her to feel safe. Dawn is doubted them, and intend to get rid of Mason. He waits for Blair to go away, then he attacks Mason, and tries to kill him, before Blair realizes what happening. Mason tries to get any rock to hit Dawn with it, but he fails and died. Dawn tries to hide Mason's body, before Blair comes back, but she finds out that Mason is dead, and surely Dawn who killed him. She sees a flare gun with Mason, then she takes it. Blair acts like she loves Dawn, and wants to marry him right now. Then she kills Dawn, to get rid of him. In the meantime, Casey and Moses are looking for Chase, and they ask if Chase knows any new information. But she lets Casey look in her bag, and finds the picture of Chase and Cooper together. She keeps teasing Chase, until Cooper puts his gun at them. He threatens and asks them to leave the place. At the same time, he remembers when he went to Chase's mother, seeking her to extend the farm rental contract. But she refused, and talked to him in a humiliating way, and she put the gun to threaten him. But when he tried to take the gun from her, a bullet was fired by mistake, and she died. Cooper tried to make it look like a robbery to not lose Chase, and then got arrested because of that. And when he wakes up from his memory, he finds that he fired a bullet by mistake from the gun and killed Moses. Suddenly, Clyde shows up to achieve justice by killing Cooper, but Chase tries to defend him, and they fight each other. She is able to kill Bonnie, and suddenly disappears as soon as she died. But Clyde stabs Chase with the stick, and he disappears without a reason. After that, Chase gets out of the hotel, and falls on the island beach. But before she dies, she wakes up again in the prison reform clinic. She sees a doctor in front of her, from the specialists who are in the session with her, and she tells Chase they saved her at the last moment from death, as her husband Cooper admitted that he killed her mother. And she becomes an innocent, as she is in prison on charges of killing her mother, and says the technicians find out that two persons go off the normal track, naming themselves Clyde and Bonnie, and they remove them from the simulation immediately. The doctor then tells her she is sure that Wells is behind everything that is happening, and she is looking for evidence to prove that he interfered in the simulation and tried to ruin it. After the doctor finishes her talk, she leaves the clinic to find Wells trying to enter, but she prevents him, and tells him that the prisoner must rest, and that she knows that he is behind the entry of the two guards who appeared in the simulation. She won't let it go until she proves his deception, and her words really pissed him off. But he returns to his office, and calls the nurse in charge of Chase's condition. Then he tells her to keep watching Chase, and try to kill her, because there is no hope that she will return to the simulation again. The nurse is his assistant in all the crimes he has done, and is forced to follow his word. Chase is still in the clinic, then a soldier comes to get her, and because she needs a psychiatric examination and a physical, as a measure of her release. The psychiatrist examines her, and tells her that all the prisoners who attended the simulation signed an agreement, and this agreement states that if something happened to the prisoners, the reformatory would not bear responsibility for that. However, all of them were sentenced to death, and they agreed to enter the simulation. The psychiatrist then asks her how she felt while she was in the simulation. Chase tells her that it was a sadistic and painful experience, and says it doesn't aim at salvation or anything, but that they were tortured inside it, and there were who died, or were killed and attacked by sharks. Chase tells her that all the feelings inside her were true, and that the island isn't considered mercy for them, but rather a torment and punishment. After leaves the psychiatrist, she goes to the clinic to be examined. Then Wells asks asks to see her privately, and when they meet, he tells her that she becomes innocent, and will go out to the world again, but with no money, because all her mother's properties were donated, and she has nothing left. But with his powers, he can help her, or send her back to prison again. She must listen to his words, and don't say any bad things about him in front of the specialists, or tell them that he tried to ruin the experiment, and that he sent Clyde and Bonnie to ruin the simulation. Wells tells her that this is because criminals deserve execution, and not another chance. Like Mason, who shot fire at people in a shopping mall, and killed them, then failed to commit suicide. Or Nurse Blair, who decided to kill all her patients, considering that she had euthanized them, and she killed 25 cases. Or Brody, who was a rapist. Chase agrees, but only on one condition. She wants to see her husband Cooper, and tells him that she knows he was the one who killed her mother, and he was the reason why she was sentenced to death. Meanwhile, Clyde and Bonnie go to trial because of what they did, and that they tried to spoil the program. The specialists ask them if there is someone who helped them do this, and the two look at Wells, but the two deny that there is someone who helped them, and that it was their idea. They are suspended from work until the investigation is completed. Chase's turn comes, and they talk to her about what she lived on the island, and tell her that the weapon that was on the island was there by mistake, and say that someone hacked the program and put it on the island to spoil the simulation. They also tell her that the number 39 was submitted as a sign of their lives, and that it indicated the number of steps from the cell complex to the electric chair, on which they were supposed to be executed if they didn't enter the simulation. Chase tells them that this simulation is a sadistic experiment, and asks what is its real purpose of it. And it's impossible to spend all these millions, and its aim is to save the poor people who are sentenced to death. And for sure it has a hidden reason, and says who orders the two to enter the simulation and spoil it surely paid them to do that. After that, they take a break, and Chase goes to the clinic. Wells and the nurse enter, and manage to tie Chase up to the chair, and she can't move. He says goodbye to Chase, as he intends to kill her, but before he kills her, the doctor enters and caught Wells red-handed. They put him on trial, and Chase tells them what they agreed upon. They are able to prove all the charges against Wells, because the nurse also confesses to what they did together. Chase's turn comes, and they tell her that she becomes innocent and can leave now. But after she knows one thing, and that everything is real except her looks, the doctor asks Chase to turn and inject her with a certain substance. She finds that she looks like an old woman, not a young one. Then the doctor tells her that she has been in prison for 25 years, and they injected her with this substance so that she would stay young. But after an hour, she will be able to see her true look, and that she returned to the island at the same age that she committed the crime. And this is one of the simulation conditions. Chase is the only one who was able to get out of the island, and the rest are still on it. And their end is known, because all of them are criminals. Except for Chase, she was the only one who is innocent. She goes out to a new world that she hasn't known in 25 years. Wells is punished for his actions, and put on the island to live on, and he pays for his actions. Thanks for